So we are going to start the briefing with a short statement from the Undersecretary with regards to the closing of this event. And then we will ask Mr. Polter and Ms. Escobillo to expound on the topics and the highlights in this morning's discussion, particularly on disaster risk financing. And then after that, we will open the floor to Q&A. So, Sir Hill.
Good afternoon, everyone. The meeting today is an offshoot of the finance ministers meeting in Tagaytay. Some of you were there. And in that meeting, there was a decision to develop disaster risk finance in APEC. And among the proposals arrived at today, one is the development of vibrant microinsurance markets. And second, the development of regional mechanisms to transfer and pool risks to reduce risks for individual countries. That's all. Thank you.
Mr. Polter, in the discussions earlier, the proposal of having an insurance mechanism that is regional in scale has been discussed, and may you expound on this proposal?
Certainly. Thank you very much. So the big question over the last day and a half has been how to build resilience of individuals against disaster events. And this has covered two topics, microinsurance and disaster risk financing. Microinsurance tends to be at the household level, where how do we build resilience for individuals that they take on the risks themselves. Risk financing is more around how can we ensure that governments have access to appropriate funding in a timely fashion after disasters in order to be able to make individuals more resilient as well. One of the ideas that was proposed in this regard is around risk pooling, which is essentially governments of different countries coming together and sharing their risk and then taking that to the international reinsurance markets in order to achieve a lower premium than if they were to go individually to the markets. So this is an idea which APEC have been considering. It follows in the steps of other risk pools which have been established already in different parts of the world, most notably in the Caribbean, with the Caribbean Catastrophe Risk Insurance Facility, and in the Pacific, where we have the Pacific Catastrophe Risk Financing Initiative. In terms of what this means for APEC and the suggestion into how to move forward that was discussed in the conference is really in twofold. We're looking at, first of all, what are the prerequisites for a pool and how can they be put in place such that if a pool is developed for APEC, how can we make sure that it will be successful? The key requisites here are ones of cooperation between the members of the countries concerned. And the second one is around data and ensuring that there is sufficient data which is standardized across all of the countries within the pool which can underpin a risk transfer mechanism. So really this is the first part, it's putting in place these prerequisites. But the second part is really to understand that risk pooling is not necessarily the only answer to developing a risk financing strategy. It can form one part of a broader strategy. And so really understanding whether a risk pool is appropriate for the countries of APEC is really the next step. So the final session that we had today was on the way forward in the Cebu Action Plan. And what was suggested as part of that plan is to conduct a feasibility study of whether a risk pool mechanism would be appropriate and possible for the APEC countries in terms of ways in which they can build resilience against disaster events.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Polter. Ms. Escobillo, with your expertise in the field of insurance and risk, what are your thoughts on this proposal for all APEC economies to tap a collective and regional insurance in a bid to boost their resiliency against disasters?
Well, I have expressed my excitement about this methodology that there would be a multi-country risk pooling, although there's a great challenge in terms of management of this kind of endeavor. But this is what we need as we look at the disaster that will be occurring not only in one country but in another country. And it cannot be that one country be just the one looking at its concern. We need the whole community. And the insurance component of this is already ripe. They have the technology, we have the theory, we have the principles, and we are practicing it. What is important is the cooperation and collaboration of all the members of APEC. Some may not be so prone to disaster. Some may be very, very prone, like the Philippines, where 62% of our geography is coastal. Then therefore, as he said, to have a lower level costs to be able to get a reinsurance cover. But what for me other concern that or important consideration in looking at how to have a resiliency would be the partnership, private-public partnership, not only of all the constituents or members of our own country, but we have to look at outside the other countries. The other countries must be involved, and they are involved in many cases. We have seen what happened to Haiyan. We have seen what happened to Nepal. So with this climate change concern, the preventive part should not be neglected. The preventive is how do we protect our environment? Because no matter how much reinsurance, insurance, risks, transfer mechanism that we have, all of us, if we not be involved, this will be a recurring and an increasing in intensity. So that's my personal take on this conversation. And the practice of sharing is not just, it's not very new. It is as old as civilization. So just learn from that. Just have that kind of heart to be able to see the needs of everyone. And all of you are part of insurance. Not simply the technical people like me, not like Richard, but all of us is insurance.
Okay, now we are opening the floor for Q&A. Who wants to ask the first question? Ben. Ben or Mikha? Okay, Mikha from Business World.
Good afternoon, Mr. Poulter. I'm Mikhail Flores of Business World. I understand in your statement a while ago that you're working on a feasibility study whether risk pooling among APEC economies is feasible or appropriate. May we know if there's a particular timetable that you have in mind or that has been put on the table this morning, and who will be taking the lead? What are the inputs that should be considered? What are the key issues that should be tackled in such a study? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So just to clarify, the feasibility study is not underway. It's a recommendation for the Cebu Action Plan that a feasibility study will be conducted. So the Cebu Action Plan is due to be finalized in September in Cebu, at which point this proposal will either be put forward or not. So it's at this stage, it's a proposal that should be the next step towards whether a risk pool should be established. So we talked a lot in the final session around short-term and long-term objectives for the Cebu Action Plan and for APEC countries as a whole. And the idea of a risk pool in my point in the final session was that really it needs to be taken in stages. And the first stage is this assessment of whether a risk pool is feasible. But at this stage, this is just a proposal.
Perhaps Yusek Hill may expound on the process on how we are firming up the Cebu Action Plan and taking some proposals from the delegates and experts.
Oh, the Cebu Action Plan will be approved by the finance ministers in Cebu in September. So after that, then it becomes an official document. Then it's presented to the leaders in November. But even before its presentation to the leaders, there will be some spade work already done on some aspects of the proposals that make up the Cebu Action Plan. Some steps will have already been made before that.
Thank you. Next question, sir.
I'm glad that Ms. Escobillo talked about protection of our environment. Now, I'd like to direct this question to the USEC, because right now here, even in Negros Occidental, there are a lot of companies which are quarrying and which have caused floods and loss of income for many people, as well as enjoying the facilities that are available in our province. Now, what I'd like to ask Mr. Beltran is, what is really the thrust of our government? Because considering what is happening here in our province, that there are several foreign companies, and there are even our countrymen who are destroying our environment. And a specific case is the one in Murcia here in our province, where they have even diverted the rivers in order to get at the gravel, sand and gravel that is available along our rivers, as well as destroying even the dams that have been set up in order to protect our environment. So what do you think should our government do, or what has it done in order to protect our environment?
The finance ministers handle only the financial part, the financial portion of the disaster risk reduction. We don't handle other things because that's the mandate of another department, which is the Department of Natural Resources. It will be discussed in the other ministers' meeting, not in the finance ministers' meeting. But I agree with you. There's need to make sure that mining is done in a way that will not destroy the environment. But other than that, I have no other statement to make. If there are complaints regarding the way the mining companies are doing it, then it should be raised to the Department of Natural Resources.
The reason I brought this up is because of Ms. Escobillo mentioned about protection of our environment. Therefore, I thought that you would be able to at least discuss with us. Because I think this should be brought to the attention of our president. And
Yes.
because you are one of the undersecretaries.
I handle only finance eh. Yeah.
Hindi mo pala...
Hindi
you
namin
can-
area. We were
No, but
stepping
they-
into the shoes of the other department. But
this-
of course, that will, if I have the opportunity, I will raise that in any committee. When I see the DENR there.
Because there is so much graft and corruption involved in this. And I think that with the thrust of the president on matuwid na daan.
I know.
So,
Sir,
but anyway, thank you. Thank you.
Sir, anyway, the discussion on APEC has a lot of areas of discussion. And at this meeting in Bacolod, we are just focusing
On
at the moment
finance.
on finance-related matters. But I'm sure when APEC convenes for a meeting on natural resources and
You can
environment,
raise that there.
Malacanang will also invite people from the press so that we can ask these questions and that these questions will be addressed more convincingly. Okay. Any more questions? Jen.
Good morning. I'm Jen from the Standard. I would just like to ask, you mentioned a while ago that risk pooling is just one of the few strategies that we're considering. What are the other strategies that can be applied in the Asia and the Pacific region, or more specifically to the Philippines, in terms of disaster risk finance? Thank you.
Can I answer that? There are non-finance initiatives like producing hazard maps. What are the others? Developing models on typhoons, things like that, so that the relocation activities from very dangerous areas. These are things that have to be done, along with the finance initiatives.
Would you
I
like
thi-
to add something, Mr. Polter?
Yeah, I think I can add a little bit to the discussion here. So I think there are two things here. There is the financial aspects and the non-financial aspects. And as the Undersecretary mentioned, even when we are trying to think about the financial solutions to these problems, often the prerequisite to getting these developing such financial mechanisms, it uses a lot of data which can then be used for other purposes. So there are often risk assessments done, for example, which can then help target disaster risk reduction and mitigation measures. So there are a lot of alternative benefits which come from trying to establish financial instruments such as risk pools, which come in a sort of the area of non-financial interventions. The other side of this is financial interventions which are not risk pools. And here, I think the Philippines is a great example of the risk financing strategy that Philippines has in place, which looks at three different levels. The strategy looks at the national level, financial protection for the national government, looks at the local level, so financial protection for LGUs, and then at the household level, so financial protection for individuals. And there are different financial instruments which can be used at these different levels. And at the individual and the household level, it's often microinsurance is the tool that is used to try and build resilience. But there are other tools that individuals can use as well, in terms of building up savings or credit facilities which can be drawn down upon after a disaster. And these apply also at the national and the local level. So while in the Philippines we are considering a risk pool at the local level for LGUs, at the national level there are other forms of risk transfer which are being considered. And beyond that, there are other examples of financial instruments such as contingent credit. So this is a facility which the World Bank offers and the Philippines has had in the past, where the national government, upon the declaration of a disaster, can request make a request to the World Bank for an immediate transfer of cash as part of a pre-agreed loan. And so that's one example of an instrument which is outside of the sphere of risk transfer, which a government can use to build its resilience against disasters.
Any more questions? Yes.
Good afternoon, for Ma'am Escobillo. I'm Mitch Lipa, ABS-CBN Bacolod. In your two-day conference here in Bacolod, is there any specific topic or issue that has been closed or resolved, or is there any resolution had come up for the two-day conference, or a sum up of your a sum up of your two-day conference?
These are proposals,
Okay.
not decisions. But we can decide to propose.
Yes. The two-day conference has been very interesting. Of course, we begin with the discussion on the microinsurance as it has have a very good impact to our brothers who are in need, especially when there is a disaster. There's an exhaustive discussion on what happened, especially when there was this Yolanda disaster. And we reviewed what other things we can do to our poor brethren, and what are the techniques, and what are the other countries' practices and experiences. So from there, we were able to gather and put in place what are the things that we can do when there would be another disaster. Not here, maybe in another part of the world. The Haiyan is a case where we learn a lot, not only the Filipinos, but the other countries. Because when we have not experienced, and it's simply an imaginary thing, it's difficult to crop up some solutions or opinions. And when we have this real thing that happened to us, we can feel what we need to do. But I just want to warn everyone that there is no such a thing as one size fits all. Okay? There is no such a thing as one size fits all solution. The experience that we're getting has to be digested, and it has to be adapted to a situation. This situation, it may be different. It's different in Tacloban. It's different in Davao. It's different in Ormoc. It's different in Nepal. Okay, things like that. But at least there is a common principle, a foundation where you can draw strength on how you attack or how you address a situation. So that what happened in the first day, and here in the second day, we saw some studies, many studies, very interesting one. One made by Richard, another one made by Apur, okay? Guys who studied what should be, to assess, what should be looked at when we want to use insurance as a solution to address a situation. So that is what I can remember. Another one talk about the equipments and the scientific way to measure the different meteorologists. Meteorologists. Satellites, the use of satellites. So we are now exposed in this conference. We got to know what are the other things being done in the different parts of the world. And that, for me, it's exciting, as we don't have to reinvent it. We can probably copy part of it and probably learn from their experience. So, and at the end, when we wrap it up, individually, we have our own suggestions as what should be the initiatives. And these are, of course, parallel to the model that we have, the elements of how we reduce or mitigate disaster risks, from preparation to, they call this, you have there the preparedness, how do you to respond, how to mitigate, and how to recover. So all those things, we identify what are the initiatives that we should do. Those are just personal. Like in my case, I have a personal recommendation, and I put a timeline, okay? But of course, it has to go through a process where it could be presented to the ministers as a resolution, and they will have to discuss it, if they will have to adapt.
Thank you.
I think
Okay.
just to add to this point as well, I would highlight that this conference has been focusing on one component of one pillar of the Cebu Action Plan, which is disaster risk financing. And the Cebu Action Plan is really the framework under which key decisions will be made. And so as the Undersecretary mentioned, that this is due for finalization in September. What we are doing at this stage is going along this road towards finalizing that framework. And the APEC is essentially getting the experience from different parts of the world, from all of its members, but also international experts and organizations who work in these fields all over the world, to try and put input into this action plan to make sure that when it's finalized, they are decisions which can be actionable and are tangible. And so really the conference, what we've been discussing over the last couple of days is a way to bring together expertise from all of the members and other partners across the world. But it's really with a view to providing input into the Cebu Action Plan to make sure when it's finalized, it's been done in consultation with experts who work in all of the different areas. So really that is the point, I would say, at which definitive decisions will have been made and actions will be taken forward.
Ben.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Ben Devero of Philippine Daily Inquirer. During the meeting, have you measured how much is the impact of disasters across the region on the economies? Maybe not only in the individual economies, but the region-wide economy. How much of the GDP of APEC is being cut whenever there are disasters that hit the region or individual countries?
For the Philippines, it's 1.1% of GDP annually. For the rest, it's lower than that, about 0.7 or 0.6% of GDP.
But then it's still a big concern, still
Yeah, it's
disasters.
still large, and it affects mainly the poor and the vulnerable. So we should do something about it, because it's not just the size of the impact, but also the impact on poverty, which is much. It will push them deeper into poverty.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, do you have a follow-up question?
May I inquire whether the APEC will come out, or will the Secretariat of this two-day conference come up with a
Report.
a report on
Yes,
everything?
we will.
Because last night I was at a social which I attended, and there were some insurance executives there, and I was asking them about this microfinance, and some of them were at a loss on how to answer me. So I would say that I would suggest, if it's possible.
Who are they? Why they don't? They're supposed to be in the industry and they don't know anything about microinsurance. Are you
They
sure?
knew very little. In fact, I learned that I knew more about it than they did. But anyway, if there's any output that's made, could this be published? Could you send us, especially those media?
It will be in our website, APEC.
It will be in the website?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that anyway, we could publish it and inform our people, especially the insurance people, about their deficiencies. Thank you.
May I comment on that, sir? A little bit on that. Being a former insurance commissioner, the getting involved to microinsurance is not compulsory to all companies. It is a passion. It is a commitment, because there is a big heart that should be entailed in this kind of endeavor. So most of our insurance companies started as commercial. It's simply a business. So just like in banking, the big banks would have some big banks would have an idea that they would not lend small amount, because it's the same thing if same kind of attention will be given if they give a bigger amount of loan. You know, it's that some bank will not accept if you are borrowing 10,000 pesos. Okay? But there is a bank that would be accepting 10,000 pesos. It's the same thing for insurance. But the good thing that what the Department of Finance is doing now is to enlighten and have this bigger awareness for everybody to get involved in this endeavor. Because it's not simply business. There is such thing as social responsibility element in that entice them to get involved. And we are seeing big companies involved in microfinance, but not through the agents. So if you're talking with an agent, that agent may not be really aware, but that company is also involved in microinsurance using technology. So wala na pong ahente, okay? So that's why he's laughing. They do not know it. No, probably you're talking to the person who is in marketing, not involved in microinsurance. But I know almost all insurance companies here in the Philippines are very much enthusiastic to be involved in helping promote insurance to the poor. Okay.
Okay, we're taking the one last question from Kai because you were asked to end the press con by 2 p.m.
Ready to be. Gutom na. Okay.
Sir Hill, meron po ba kayong estimate yung regarding the typhoons and the disasters that we face every year? Meron po ba kayong estimate on poverty incidents na possible increase every year because of the disasters that we experience? Kasi before sa Yolanda, there was a increase of 1 million. So I just want to get a sense if you have
It's not on a per
estimate.
typhoon basis, but based on the statistics, the poverty rate, yung persons below the poverty line, families below the poverty line as a percent of total families, it went up from 18.2% in 2013 before Typhoon Haiyan struck, and it rose to 20% of total population.
That's nationwide or
Yes,
that's
yes,
nationwide?
the whole country.
That's is that also an average na across?
Percent of total families.
Okay.
You can see that in the website of NSCB.
Just to add, about their poverty, we have a different poverty rate in different regions. So it is also in that website.
NSCB, National
nscb.gov.ph.
Yeah, and national
And census.gov.ph.
Statistics
Census.
Coordinating Board,
Oo.
NSCB,
NSCB.
National Statistical Coordination Board.
Is the National Statistical. NSCB.
Actually, for Tacloban region, that region, the impact is much higher. They even exceeded the poverty rate of ARM.
Okay, on that note, we are going to end the press con, but we would like to seek for closing statements from the three of our resource persons. What do you think is the importance of the topics of disaster risk finance and microinsurance, especially in terms of the overall agenda of achieving inclusive growth and sustainability of growth of the APEC region?
It's disaster risk finance is very important in avoiding deterioration of the poverty rating of the country. While we are growing at a very fast pace, 7% a year, our poverty rate is not improving as much because just one typhoon would wipe out all the gains from the increase in GDP. So disaster risk finance is very important and should be pursued by the country because it affects poverty significantly.
Okay, Ms. Escobillo.
Okay. I thought the lady will be the last one. Okay, the lady in the middle. All right. It's it's a good thing that we are talking about it now. We never heard about this long time ago. So having it in our conversation will bring awareness to our people that there's such a thing as a preventive and a solution, not really a solution, mitigation of being poorer. Okay? And the partnership here is not simply the government, but the other agencies in this society. Individual, as he said, you have the government, the local government, and the family units. But more than that, for me, is there are other partners that who can be involved in this disaster risk financing. And the technology, the technology or the needed elements are still a challenge. We need to have, as I call, big data. We don't have much information. We need to collect those information. Yes, we can have the design theoretically, but when you implement it, it will be a big challenge for us. So that's what I want to see. Maybe we talk about it, now we are aware, but you, the media, is a big partner in bringing all these elements for the success of having a disaster risk financing.
Mr. Polter?
Thank you. To close, I would just point to really the issue that's at hand here, which is that the frequency and severity of disasters worldwide are increasing at a rapid rate. Disaster risk financing can protect precious development gains and can also protect governments from having to reallocate funds from other important areas such as health or education in the aftermath of a disaster. I think that APEC in particular is perfectly positioned to bring together countries in the Asia-Pacific region to tackle these issues in a coordinated way, to share experience and ensure that strategies are developed for each of their member countries in a way that is appropriate to the risks that they face.
Thank you very much to our resource persons for sharing your time and the information to our media friends.
Thank you very much, too.
And thank you also to our media friends.
Thank you, Mitch.